everyone, and welcome to today's Senturus webinar on KPIs from multiple sources in minutes. And beyond that, agenda for today, we'll do some quick introductions. We'll talk about challenges to accessing timely insights. We'll do an overview of Incorta's unified platform for data analytics. We'll do a quick demo. And then we'll do a bit of an overview of Senturus and some additional resources. And as I said, we'll wrap up with a Q&A session. For today's presentation, we are lucky to have Mr. Michael Weinhauer here. As many of you know, Mike is a Senturus alum. He now is a senior sales engineer at Incorta, and Mike has an immense depth and breadth of experience across the analytics space. Like many of us here, he's been doing this for more than a decade or two. So it's great to have Mike here today. I'm Steve Reed-Pittman, Director of Enterprise Architecture and Engineering here at Senturus. I'm just here to kind of do the intros. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Mike.
Excellent. Well, thanks, Steve. Thanks for having me back here. It's good to be back on the Senturus webinar series. As we normally do here, we like to get a sense for the pulse of our audience, if you will, or the topology of the clients here and the attendees. So the first question we have for you, we got two polls here today. What are your core systems of record, your ERP, your CRM, or whatever? Using Oracle, any flavor of that, EBS, Fusion, et cetera, et cetera. Even I would bucket JD Edwards or PeopleSoft in there. NetSuite, SAP, Salesforce, or some other system. All right, 72%. I'm going to close it out and share it back. So you should be seeing the poll results there. So good half, a little more than half are on Oracle or some permutation of Oracle. No NetSuite customers, interesting. 15% SAP and a quarter other. By the way, if you want to comment on what the other might be, our polling is sort of limited in terms of the specificity we can get to and the number of options we can provide. You can go ahead and put that in the questions window or in the chat if you would like to share that with us. Always curious especially when it's that big of a percentage. And then we have one other poll here, so I'm going to click over to the next slide. What are the biggest challenges in your existing analytics environment? And this is a multiple choice. So is it time to insights, meaning is it backlogs in IT and long ETL pipelines? These are kind of leading questions, right? I've never met a customer who's like, no, that's not a problem. So I expect a lot of people everyone pretty much to check that one. Is it difficulty to responding to changes? So do you need a new column? What's the next business question? The business changes, or you have mergers and acquisitions maybe. Those are always things that create a whole bunch of chaos, and how quickly and how comprehensively are you able to respond to those changes as an organization and really leverage data? Is it the inability to drill from high-level KPIs to granular details? In other words, in a lot of cases you end up with summary level detail, but can you get down? What does it take for you to get down and do? Why is that red light blinking red? And or is it lack of self-service? Self-service is the holy grail of analytics, and organizations have achieved a greater or lesser extent of success there, owing to the fact that it's a combination of technology and people and processes, and it's not easy to change all those and move all those levers. Or again, is it something else? So I'm gonna go ahead and close this and share it back. I got about 3/4 of y'all sharing your insights. Thank you for doing that. And only 43% said it's time to insight, so you guys made a liar out of me. About a third difficulty responding to changes. Again, same percentage, closing in on half. Inability to get from high level to granular details. The biggest chunk there, lack of self-service, and then 43% other. Another one that I'm curious about what that other is. It could be a lot of different things, but anyway, that's always fascinating to see what people are encountering, and again, sort of what the lay of the land is, if you will. So with that, I want to dive into our topic today, which is getting insights and KPIs from multiple sources. in minutes. Minutes might be a bit of a stretch, but you can get to it pretty quickly here with Incorta. And what Incorta specializes in is real-time analytics on raw business data. So I'll start out by caveating real-time, because I know somebody's always going to say, oh, real-time, like streaming data, or vibration and temperature sensors off of equipment and stuff like that. We're not talking about that real-time. We mean more in the operational sense. However, we do have customers that are refreshing that data as frequently as every 5 to 10 minutes. So that's what we mean by real-time there. And the key is raw business data here, and I'm gonna get into that in just a second here. Is we get you access to all the data. So the challenges that we see people come to us for are, again, kind of tying back to those polls, are that you need to make data-driven decisions now, while the question you're asking and the decision you need to make is still relevant. The landscape keeps changing in business, and having those long, complex data pipelines makes it really hard to answer those questions quickly. And not having all that dark data, right? You end up sacrificing a lot at the altar of performance, and you're looking at summary level detail, and it's difficult to drill down very far, much further than a level or two, when you really need to go 6 or 7 deep. And the old burden of analytics on IT, people aren't spending, they're not looking to expand their IT organizations, especially now, the economy being on a little shakier footing. They're trying to do more with less, and you want to create, self-service. So not only to empower business users and allow them to answer their own questions or answer the next question, but to reduce that backlog and, again, do more with less with lean IT staff. So if that sounds familiar to you, the quote-unquote modern data architecture that so many of us have built our careers on and are used to is really kind of anathema to those 3 things I just mentioned on the prior slide. Right, and so this probably looks very familiar to pretty much everybody on the line here. You've got your systems of record. You use some type of an ETL tool along the way here to land that data, perhaps into a data lake, maybe not, or an operational data store or something like that. And then more ETL happens where it lands in perhaps a data warehouse or some facsimile of that. Wherein about 75% of that data is being sacrificed, right? It's being left behind, it's being aggregated, and whatnot. And then it's further aggregated and again sort of obfuscated, I'll say, as it's landed in things like data marts. And then I would argue even further as we start pushing it out to the end users. So every one of these arrows is code, it's time, it's money, and it's in agility. And then I'll go further. What we're going to touch upon today is not only sort of how Incorta addresses this, but how we give you flexibility in this without leading to even more metadata that you end up creating in Tableau or Power Query or Power BI or Click metadata. Right? You can do it all kind of in one place, and you're all singing off the same sheet of music. So this is not really this is suboptimal for the aforementioned challenges of being agile and answering questions while they're relevant and things like that. So again, the typical flow is question, call IT, get on their rather lengthy list. They got to pull the data in, and then every new question you got to kind of go back through this whole process. So Incorta came about because there are a bunch of guys actually from Oracle that were in their applications area that were like, well, what if I had a question and I could already see it and load it myself and have insights within minutes? And so they created Incorta, which the real difference is here is that what we do is we pull data directly in from those sources without any ETL. We make, we call it a digital twin of that data. So it's really easy, light touch on that source system. We pull it in very rapidly, so we can pull in billions of records across multiple systems, parallel loading, things like that. And then you get direct line of sight back into all of that data. You're not having to aggregate it and trim it down because you can't pull in that much data or it's going to be too big on disk. We just pull it right in, and then we expose it via either directly or through business-friendly business views, which are exactly what you might think they are, right? Kind of the standard dimensions and measures that facilitate self-service in whatever tool it is, whether it's in Incorta using our own internal analyzer tool, or via external tools like Tableau and Power BI, which are pretty much ubiquitous. I would guarantee in almost any organization above a certain size, you definitely have Excel, like way too much of it. You probably have Tableau, and you probably also have Power BI. Additionally, oftentimes people use Incorta as a data hub because we free the data from, say, Oracle Cloud, right, or the complexities and myriad sort of Byzantine structures and ABAP and all that good stuff from SAP, and pull that in and enable us to push that up to something like Azure Synapse Analytics, or push it out to a Blackline or an Anaplan or something to use for planning purposes, with drill back to the raw record level sub-ledger detailed data to really facilitate speeding those types of processes, right? Closing the books, budgeting, planning, and forecasting and whatnot. So it's really a fundamentally different approach to collapsing and eliminating those pipelines and really creating agility in a world where you want to do more with less and need to answer questions quickly. So the benefits are we give you unrivaled data access. You run those analytics directly on the application data that's 100% identical to the source. You have complete control over the governance and access and the lineage that's verifiable all the way down to the individual record level details, right? So your lineage, instead of being, when you're looking at lineage in a lot of other tools, you have to go, oh, well, yeah, this is Tableau, and it came from this extract, which came from, Bob's SQL server under his desk, or this system, and it's combined with this. And by the time you trace it, right, it's like kind of going back to the ancient Egyptians. Here, it's one line, right? It's like, oh, this field comes from this field in my ERP system, or this field in Salesforce, and you can see that easy line of sight. And we provide this really fast time to insights where you can deliver the latest data in minutes, quickly join other sources, and provide sub-second queries. And that's really where Incorta is different. So I'll ask you to kind of suspend your disbelief in a moment, for a moment, and understand how this really shakes up that landscape and that traditional way of thinking. So how do we accomplish that in Incorta? Well, we have a technology called direct data mapping, and really the platform has several technologies that really facilitate all of this. First of all, that parallel data loading that I talked about, both full and incremental, by the way. So we pull in, make that digital twin, and then we do an incremental load every 5, 10, 15 minutes, whatever your business requires. Again, we're able to do that really quickly. Don't have to do a bunch of ETL or any ETL on it in a lot of cases, so that we're able to do that very quickly without bogging those systems down and give you those insights. And the direct data mapping is really this enriched metadata map and smart query routing. So the most expensive part, and I'll show you this in the demonstration, the most expensive and complicated and difficult part for any database is the join. It has to plan the join, has to go through the optimizer, and even the most modern, databases with the latest technology and the most horsepower, they tell you, Teradata, don't go beyond really 3 or 4 joins if you're doing, with any volume of data. And so what Incorta does with direct data mapping is every point of data that we ingest is aware of how it relates to every other point of data, and we pre-plan the join paths between those data points, so we don't have to plan the query at runtime. And that's really what's fundamentally different. So we are able to query billions of rows and do hundreds of joins across thousands of tables across multiple sources. So think about that for a second. That's really the difference, and it really works, which is pretty amazing. And we load it into memory, and you're able to hit it with Incorta or with any of these other tools, which I'm going to show you in just a little bit here. So I'm going to show you how we're able to do that and kind of walk you through how the platform does that. And then this is just showing you that business schema. This is a snapshot of what Incorta looks like. I'm going to walk you through this in a little bit, but we give you this ability to create those simplified views, because obviously, you SAP folks out there, or even Oracle, it's you wouldn't want to present anybody with an ERP type schema, right? Or those in a lot of cases those names, and you have other logic that you want to have in here, like calculations or AR aging buckets, currency conversions, things of that nature. So you put those into what we call a business view that is much more friendly for your business analysts, and allows you to maintain data governance controls and sort of control who has access to that data while enabling self-service, all within the same platform. And then importantly, we provide a set of data apps, and there's a reason we sort of asked about Oracle, SAP, Salesforce, NetSuite, Workday, because we have pre-built content across a wide array of business processes, order to cash, procure to pay, APA, RGL, all that stuff, built for a lot of the core systems like Oracle, EBS, Fusion, JDE, SAP, Salesforce, NetSuite, et cetera, et cetera. And this is a long and ever-growing list of applications. So the gist of that is that we have the connections, we have the knowledge of the schemas and what data to pull and how to pull that from those systems, and then those friendly business views on top of that, and content, dashboards and whatnot that are pre-built. They get you, a good chunk of the way there to spinning this up and seeing value out of the system really, really quickly. So now you're going, like me when I first heard about Incorta, I was like, yeah, right. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you the application and show you how we actually accomplish some of this stuff. So the scenario I want to share with you today is what we call is called a customer 360 analysis. And I love this scenario because almost any organization has customers, clients, whatever you want to call them, and they always want to have ideally a better view of them, a more comprehensive view of them. In some businesses it's more critical than others, but what's also universal is that information invariably lives in a whole bunch of different systems, right? You've got your ERP system that has what did they buy, for example. You have your CRM systems. What might they buy? Sorry, I can't form sentences here, too much caffeine. And then ticketing systems, for example, that are like, well, what are the problems they're having? What kind of support are they requiring, or are they just not using the product? Right? We don't see opportunities, we don't see support. Maybe they're a customer that we're at risk of losing, right? And then in order to get that view, to sort of say, oh, am I going to lose this customer? Can I cross-sell, upsell? What opportunities do I have, and how do they relate to how happy the customer is? It takes forever to get that data together around your customer retention and churn, because you're pulling it into spreadsheets, you're running it through ETL. Very complicated, very difficult if you can do it at all. And that data a lot of times isn't in the data warehouse, especially not at the level that you need or the currency you need to really get a full picture of your customer, right? And that's especially true for more smaller transaction customers. Like imagine Starbucks, right? You're going in and you're buying a cup of coffee. They have like a few minutes to sell you that scone, which makes a big difference in their profit margins, right? So you got to have the right product there at the right time, give them the right offer, all that sort of stuff. So customer 360 analysis is something that is pretty relatable to everybody. So the demo I want to show you today is really a demo where we actually do combine in Incorta ERP data, service ticketing data, and CRM data, Oracle, ERP, Jira, and Salesforce in this example, but it could be anything. And what we do is we pull in the data, we integrate it, we provide that reporting off of that, and then also provide the ability then to drill back into those systems with context and report off of that either with Incorta or with a lot of the tools like Power BI and Tableau that your organizations know and love, using again that same sheet of music, right? That same business view that's going to turn up the same numbers across departments and across your organization, because you're all using the same query engine, the same business logic that you put into that, and it leads to better decisions on more current information. All right, so I'm going to jump over here to my demonstration. Hopefully, with all my yapping here, it hasn't disappeared on me. Uh-oh, might have to log back in. Come on, baby. Oh, no such luck. Give me a second. Sorry about that. Just gonna log back into my system here. It really doesn't take very long. All right, so this is the Incorta application. Everything is browser-based. Everything you do from system administration to data acquisition, schema management, those friendly business views, and content creation is done through the browser. So that means you can embed it in Salesforce or vice versa. You can drill back and forth. There's a bunch of stuff you can do here. But for purposes of this Customer 360 demonstration, what I'm first going to show you, and I apologize, it's a bit of a Christmas tree. I didn't pick the colors on this thing. This is a 360 customer retention dashboard. And what it's doing is it is showing information across 3 different systems, that ERP system, the CRM system, and the ticketing system. And of course, it's taking its sweet time here because I'm on a webinar. It's always slower on these things. Generally, these dashboards do pop up in kind of seconds, a few seconds. But what I want to show you here is what I've got here is revenue from my ERP system. I have the quantities sold from my ERP system as well, forecast revenue from Salesforce, and issues from my ticketing system. So take note of the numbers here. And then I've got a bunch of other visualizations that show my top accounts by revenue. So that's ERP based. Revenue by state, geo based, same information. This is all Salesforce data showing my win rates and whatnot. And these are all my high priority tickets for my top 5 accounts, or for top 5 in terms of total tickets. And then importantly, what I've done here is this is individual customer transaction level information. And the reason I show this is because what we're talking about here is would be really tricky for a lot of systems to pull off. To be able to show this information together, and then be able to say click on Staples, and have it instantaneously drill down on all of those systems and show me that, hey, I've got 55 million in revenue here, 55.04. I have roughly 1,000 items, or 800 some odd items that I've sold. I don't have any forecast revenue because the deals are all lost here. I've got 76 issues. Here's how they sort of break down for my high priority issues. But then I have 4,652 actual transaction lines. And that's filtered that down automatically across with data from all of those systems. Now, you might look at this dashboard initially and say, okay, big deal, right? I can do this in Power BI or Tableau or whatever. But the reality is that doing this in Incorta, I'm just going to drill into one of these insights here, and this is our insight builder, and I'm going to show you what the query plan looks like. And this is actually going from our accounts table to the transactions down to this transaction lines all table, which has billions of records in it, right? It's very big. And so what I'm going to do is sort of show you how we're able to do this without a bunch of ETL and get to this dashboard pretty quickly, both in Incorta and outside of Incorta using some common tools. So kind of stepping back from this, the first step is the acquisition of the data. And we do that, like a lot of tools, through connectors. And we have hundreds of connectors. We have native connectors that are Incorta, built and supported. We also have a partnership with CData, who has hundreds of connectors. So we can connect to virtually anything. If you're getting data out of your system now, whether it's from flat files, native database connectivity, on-prem, in the cloud, applications, like I said, Oracle, NetSuite has various ways of connecting to it. We support all of those. Salesforce, its latest sort of V2 connectivity that has a bunch of new functionality in it. Data lakes, file systems, things like Google Sheets, and then REST APIs and whatever, and then even all the way down to basic kind of ODBC and JDBC. And what we do is you simply use whatever that particular means of connectivity is, and using a JDBC driver, you're pointing to the host for that system, giving it a username and password, or passing it OAuth credentials, whatever it is, that provides you with the connectivity to that system. You can also have local data files. So in a lot of cases, you might have flat file data that's coming over, pull it over from FTP, SFTP, uploading the files, whatever it is. We can pull that data in as well. And then we have data destinations that are sort of like that black line, or the planning systems or whatever, when we're serving as a data hub, or Azure Synapse, things like that. So once you've created those connections, then we go and create a schema. And this is where we actually go query that system and pull that data all into Incorta. So this is an example of a schema that we pull in using our data apps. And this is just like a standard database schema, right? But the difference is we pull the data in, and we pull it in just like this, right? This is a big hairball, right? You would never expose something like this generally to any sort of front-end tool, because it would just tip over and die, right? Anybody with any analytics experience will tell you that even joining a few tables here in this ERP system without doing a bunch of ETL and denormalizing this stuff and reducing those joins would issue a light dimming query, and you'd have people screaming at you, and your tools would tip over. Much less combining that with Salesforce, with Jira Service Desk, or data science models or anything like that, and attempting to query across those. So the difference here is that Incorta actually pulls these literally in. Think about it like a select star from table A, select star, or column A, B, and C from table B, and we're able to pull in. This is 2 billion rows, and you can see if I sort of sort this really quickly, my transaction lines, that's 471 million records of data. So the dashboard that I was showing you before, where I'm pulling in the transaction lines that's actually pulling in that information for those top 5 and filtering that out of 471 million records in real time. And then it's doing the other queries against Salesforce and Jira, and from a data science thing that a customer return model that I'm not showing in this particular demo. And we're able to pull in that 471 million records very quickly, about 6 gigabytes an hour. So we're able to load this thing in about 39 minutes, all these tables, all those 2 billion records. And it's only 46 gigabytes on disk. Because we're not exploding that out and denormalizing it, we're able to do this with relatively commodity hardware. Incorta, we're cloud first. We do have an on-prem offering, but this is a pretty basic Linux cluster. I want to say it's about 8 to 12 cores and like 32 gigabytes of RAM. So nothing crazy. This isn't a Teradata, SAP HANA and Netezza kind of giant box. Pretty straightforward commodity Linux box that can pull this off, because we're pulling it straight over. We're not doing a bunch of ETL and exploding it, and we're landing it in highly compressed Parquet files as it sits in that system. And then we can do, again, incremental loads on that data. So the transaction lines all table, we would want to update that frequently, because think your Starbucks, right? Every 5-10 minutes, you got a whole bunch more data you want to pull in. This one changes a lot. The GL code combinations, probably not so much, right? So you would maybe load that daily or not touch it very often. So you have complete flexibility around this. But the point is, I pulled all this data in, and then what I've done is I've done the same thing for Salesforce, right? So I pulled this in. Here's all the typical Salesforce objects that you'd see, right? Your opportunities, your leads, your accounts. Again, going into the diagram, we are pulling that straight in as it is, including things like the history, so you can do all that sort of point in time reporting and whatnot. And again, we're sort of joining that up to the accounts receivable, which is our ERP system, and we're joining that out to our Jira Service Desk, so we know our customer support issues. And the last one is the Jira Service Desk, again, connecting to that system and pulling in all the information from that we want, right? We have our projects, we have our roles, our issues, and everything around that. And what we're doing is we are, in this case, using, from a business perspective, we are linking all of these to our customer accounts table, which is serving as our customer master. Now, you might use an MDM solution, or in some cases, customers are using Incorta to actually run fuzzy logic against that to do some of that data cleansing and that data governance. But however you're doing it, generally you're going to have sort of a gold standard, right, for your customer accounts. So in this case, what we've done for the customer accounts is the ERP system serves as the customer master, and Salesforce has a custom field that has customer ID. And all we're doing is we're joining that account customer ID to my customer accounts master table on customer account ID in the ERP system. And we're able to do that, again, because we are pulling the data in at the lowest level of detail. So it's a lot simpler to do that. And then on the Jira Service Desk, I'm doing the same thing. I have an account key, and I have some account key logic that I'm doing in here. I can actually go in here to, I'm going to go into that table and show you the joins here. Right, so here's that join, and there's actually some logic in here, so you're not sort of limited by the just doing those joins. You can actually do more complex logic on that. So I'll go in here and show you this real quick. So we're on customer ID string to customer account ID. I'm doing a string function, and in this one, I'm actually doing a formula where I'm substringing that and bucketing those in distributor versus retail, so that I'm able to then join that out to that other system, right? So that's just a simple calculation in Incorta that I can create either at this schema level, and then it gets sort of built into this table, or I can do it at any level here. So again, so now I've got the three systems connected to. I've pulled in all the data in those systems, and I'm maybe updating that every few minutes. And I've created relationships across those. So now I'm able to do reporting across those and query across all of those. But giving people, again, that sort of a view of the information would be kind of a nightmare, right? Send your self-service users screaming. So what we have, again, are these business schemas, which are these friendly business views that allow you to present to your end users a much friendlier view of that data. Now, what I've done here is created a customer 360 view that has a bunch of the accounts receivable data. You give it a friendly name, pulls in some of a bunch of the Salesforce opportunity information, again, that Jira Service Desk information, and a bunch more of the Salesforce opportunity information. And as well, there is logic in here, calculations, same calculation editor, same sort of functionality, where I'm creating opportunity status buckets based on the fields in Salesforce, right? So now this is a subset of that data that incorporates all three of those. And now I'm able to go ahead and say, oh yeah, you know what? I want to look at, by month and by country, and I can just go ahead and pull in information here and say, this is my, my revenue, and do an aggregate table. And you can see how I'm pulling data from that 2 billion record system, and I just pulled this in seconds. And so it's very, very quick, very, very easy to do that because of that direct data mapping and the way we've stored and the way we load the data into memory. And from there, what I do is I can create those insights, and I end up back with my, I combine those into dashboards that have, bar charts and maps and things of that nature. So that's kind of how we get from point A to point B. So you can see where, without having to do all of that ETL and pulling in all of the data, that not only can I do that very rapidly, right? I pulled in 2 billion records in about 39 minutes. Obviously, I didn't do that here. There's another webinar that we did with Senturus, I want to say about 2 months ago, where I do an overview and actually do load about 25 million records. It loads in about a minute. So you don't have to take my word for it, but we load that data, created those joins, not too complicated, right? Created a business schema where we pull in the fields we want, maybe throw in a few calculations, and boom, we're off to the races creating content that is doing queries across these three systems and giving me insights into that, from high-level KPIs all the way down to that record-level transactional detail in sub-second time. Now, so the other half of this, or the other part of this, is the desire by organizations who have other BI tools and they want to front end that instead of using Incorta, is using Power BI and Tableau. So here's a dashboard in Power BI that shows pretty much the exact same information. I'm going to toggle back and forth between these a little bit. I hope I don't give you all a headache. But what I want to quick show you is I'm going to jump back to this guy, and I just want to bring to your attention sort of that business schema that I showed you, right? So I have customer 360, customer 360. Here's that business-friendly view that has 76 columns in it. And if I wanted to attach to that again, I've got these 76 columns here that have descriptions, and I can go view all the states and all that kind of good stuff, right? So kind of take a mental picture of that. And now I'm going to toggle over here, and if I show you the fields, here's my customer 360 with my 76 fields in it. So I've exposed this business view. The metadata that I have in Power BI is one view, right? So think about that for a second. Instead of having to pull in all these tables and do all the joins and do it again in Power BI, put a bunch of logic in Power BI, I put all that stuff into a business view. And what that yields for me is a dashboard where the numbers are identical to the numbers in the Incorta dashboard. So I'll bring your attention to the revenue across the board here: 222 million, 67,000, forecast amount 1.05, 541 issues, and then 46,960 individual transactions for this data set. Got my top accounts by revenue, Staples, Costco, etc. Geographical information here, revenue by state, Washington at 31 million. My opportunities, you can see the loss, the win percentage. Here's the one that I have open. Here's my tickets by customer. So I'm actually pulling information across those three systems. So again, if I toggle back over to my original dashboard here, sorry for whipping you around a little. I just don't know a much better way to do this. You will notice that it's loading very slowly. You'll notice that numbers are identical to numbers that are in that Power BI dashboard, right? So here 222, 67,000, 1.05, 541. Top 5 customers are the same, revenue are the same, opportunities are the same, and I have at the bottom 46,960 records, right? So the only difference really between these two is that I have the 46,960 in this dashboard, and I sort of go, click on one and it filters it down. What I do here is I've actually done drill through. So I click on this, or I click on Costco, right? And you can see where it does the same thing. It's going to go and update all the metrics, and those, by the way, are gonna tie out to my Incorta dashboard. So if I drill into Office Depot here, you see 28.84, et cetera, 28.84, Florida, all that good stuff. And then what I do is I drill through, and that's because Power BI is not going to let me bring back more than 1 million records at a time. So if I want to look at that detailed data, I'm actually going to go then drill through, and I get a filtered list of all of the transactions, right? And that number ties out, by the way, to the revenue number. And I can look at all the individual tickets, and I could even then create links back, or I could even drill back into Incorta, passing through maybe Office Depot High and whatever. I didn't set that up in here. But the point is that I'm able to really interact with that data, and I'm doing the same thing here in Power BI, and it tracks and ties and does the same thing, all with a single business view off of those three systems. And if I want to add another column to that, great, go for it, push it out, and I'm able to use it. Now, the last thing I'm going to show you is, I think I covered everything off there, you can do the same thing in Tableau. So again, going back to any one of my individual visualizations, here's my business view, right? It's my customer 360. Customer 360, it's not really highlighting for me here. But you can see these are my 76 fields that are the same ones, and they're used to populate these various metrics. And the 222 million, 67,000, 1.05, 541 issues, 31 million in Washington, you get the idea, right? So I'm not going to run you through all of that here, but I can create those same visualizations. So the organizations, the departments, lines of business, whatever, partners, vendors, they can use the tool of choice that they want to use, because we're just a Postgres database to that system, right? So if I wanted to actually go and create a new one, I have my credentials saved in here. I'll see how quickly this goes. I'm going a little off road here because we have a little bit of time. But to do all this and create new content, I just open up a new Power BI instance, and come on here. There we go. Sorry, it's not cooperating with me. And I'm going to go get data, and I have my credentials and everything already stored in here. Right? That's how Power BI works. And what actually I'm not going to do that because I don't have that stuff handy. All I need to do is, if I want to create content, I'm going to say new, and I have to just flip a switch in Incorta, right? You have to, by default, you can't, but you just have to flip a switch that says allow connection to other visualization tools. And then what Incorta does is it says, oh, hey, you want to use Power BI? Here's your connection string information. And this one's a demo instance, so it doesn't have the actual connect string up there. But it would say, like, here's my, demo.incorta.cloud, whatever, port 5436. You put that in the Postgres data, the fields, right, the UI, point it to direct query, and it'll say, hey, here's all the business schemas that are available to you, right? It'll show these to the extent that you have permissions on it, right? So if you've said, well, only my marketing people can see Customer 360, then that's synced up with your Active Directory, your LDAP, your Okta through SAML, or whatever that is, and then they're able to easily see that in Power BI or Tableau or whatever that tool is. Right, so I'm not actually going to put that in here because I don't have the connection string handy, but you get the idea. You just pull that thing in, and then you're off to the races. So that was all I had to show you from a demonstration perspective. So to summarize, we get that you've sort of maybe seen demonstrations of other BI tools, but there are some really, really key differences that I really tried to highlight and hammer home. Is that how do you do these various tasks? Drill down. We give you that transaction level detail, right? You saw me. I pull in all the data, I roll it up, drill all the way down to the record level detail. I don't have to switch screens. I don't have to dump it out to Excel, go to a different tool. You do it all in one place. Everyone else pretty much limited to subsets, and you're doing what I was just talking about. Rendering reports, sub-second from click. Again, they're a little slower usually over these web meetings. It tends to be very, very quick across, and that's billions of records, thousands of tables, several systems, right? And here it takes minutes, hours, days, or it isn't even possible for some of these complex reports. How long does it take to add new business data? I didn't do that here, but to add a new source, you can imagine I create a connector, pull the data in, 2 billion records in 40 minutes. Smaller systems, you'd be super quick. Otherwise, you got to take weeks to rebuild the connections, remodel, and figure out, okay, how does this ripple downstream to everything else? And then how do I know my results are accurate? Because you don't have to reshape the data here. I know it's accurate. I can go in and see it. If a number's off, I can go see what's comprising that number and fix it. In a lot of cases, it's actually wrong in the source system, right? Somebody put it in, it's in the wrong place. And then here, versus you've got to go back and comb through sort of inscrutable and complex ETL at whatever stage in that process. So that by definition usually means error, excluded data, summarized data, you don't know where that stuff's coming from. So again, the sort of timelines to actually get things done here. The traditional BI and EDW, I think this is sort of generous too, is you add all this stuff up, it goes 6 to 18 months. In Incorta, you're talking days. Now, of course, you'll spend some more time doing QA and all that sort of stuff, but it's really quick because you're not spending all your time doing all this other stuff. So the proof is in the pudding, right? So we've got some great logos here. Starbucks went from 12 months to sort of analyzing a lot of their merchandising stuff and providing say offers on stuff that might expire for perishable goods, to being able to do that in 60 days. And they're, implement this project. Equinix, from not possible to 44 days. Shutterfly, 3 months to 30 days. Broadcom, not possible to 11 days. They actually acquired Symantec, the antivirus company, and they integrated their systems with Broadcom's through Incorta in 11 days. So they were able to actually get a view across ERP systems across a newly acquired company in days. Think about that. That's something that takes companies years if they even bother doing it. So it's really cool in terms of how you're able to do that and get visibility. So if this sounded interesting to you, here's a couple of other resources that are here. And by the way, you can pull this deck down as Steve mentioned. You can go try it yourself. There's a link here. You can spin up a cloud instance. You can pull in your own data. You can try one of our data apps. And you can go join the Incorta community if you have questions or want to contribute or whatever, want to just learn about Incorta. And in the vein of learning, you can learn about Incorta using our free courses. They're literally free e-learning courses, and there's free instructor-led courses for both business users. The business user one takes a few hours and self-paced. You can get certified in Incorta, take up this 5-day course. It's a few hours a day, also self-paced, or there's an instructor-led one. And there's a full admin course where you install Incorta, you learn the whole shooting match. That's instructor-led, all free. And if you want to just go learn more about Incorta, our data apps, whatever, maybe sign up for we have a data app week coming up, which is, again, remember our blueprints for major systems like Oracle, NetSuite, et cetera, et cetera. Some of the customers that I highlighted there will be actually speaking at that, showing the real business benefits that they get from Incorta. So companies like Meta, aka Facebook, Comcast, and others. So definitely go over there and check that out. So hopefully that was handy. And with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Steve for a little talk about how Senturus can help you with Incorta and other things.
All right, thank you, Mike. Also, just a quick reminder for everybody that we are going to be doing Q&A here shortly. So if you do have questions, go ahead and type them into the question panel while I'm doing my thing here. We've got a few questions already, but definitely add any additional questions you may have. And as Mike said, remember you can download the deck from our website. And you'll also find some additional technical details as a little bonus in that deck that we weren't able to cover in today's webinar. So you can dig a little deeper into Incorta by taking a look at that deck. A few quick things about Senturus. Number one, ways we can help you, of course. We can help you when it comes to Incorta, we can help you with a phased implementation strategy. We can help you migrate data sources over. We can help you with integrating Incorta into your existing analytics environment, regardless of the tools you use today, which of course for us means often connecting to Power BI, Tableau, and or Cognos. And we can help you out with dashboard and report development across the board. Beyond that, as I mentioned earlier, you can find additional resources on our website, not only the deck from today, but an enormous amount of knowledge. We've been sharing our BI expertise for a couple of decades now, and you can find a whole bunch of it out there on our website. So definitely check out the Senturus website for demos, tech tips, and a bunch of other valuable technical information. We've got a couple of upcoming events. One is the Incorta Data App Week, which Mike just mentioned. That's coming up December 6th through 9th. You can register at the Incorta website. And as Mike said, the Data App Week will be focusing on some customer spotlights of how some of the biggest organizations out there are using Incorta to improve their time to fast analytics. We've also got another Senturus webinar coming up mid-December using query folding to improve Power BI performance. That'll be Thursday, December 15th, hosted by our own Pat Powers, and I'll probably be here in the background also on that one. So hope to see you there. Senturus, in general, just a quick bit about us. We concentrate on BI modernizations and migrations across the entire BI stack. We've got a long, strong history of success. Many of you have worked with us for many years. We've been in the industry for over 20 years. over 1,300 clients and 3,000 plus projects. So we've been here for a long time. We've got a dedicated team. We're large enough to meet all your business analytics needs, and we're small enough to provide you with personal attention. So do reach out to us with any needs you have in your analytics environment. We're also hiring. So if you're interested in joining the Senturus team, we are looking for talented and experienced professionals. We're currently looking to hire a FinOps consultant and a managing consultant. So if you're interested in joining the team here at Senturus, reach out to us either by email or on our website to get more details and or to send us your resume. And with that, we're going to go ahead and jump into the Q&A session. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Mike. I might pipe in here and there, but it looks like we've got a few questions in the questions.
Yeah. I've actually been reading through those. June, thanks for being on. It's good to see your name and quote unquote hear you out there. So your question was why give access to raw data ERP otherwise to users? Isn't it more trouble than it's worth giving access to at least refine or clean data? So you know you're right, June, in the sense that I think it depends on the users and what their use case is. So remember, what we're talking about here in a lot of these things is our operational use cases. So imagine you're in the finance department and you're trying to close the books, or you're doing budgeting and forecasting, and that you're basing those numbers off of the the data in your ERP system, and you're like, well, okay, why is this number not tying out, or why is this number like this? Then they end up going and pulling up all that data and looking at the record level data and being like, oh, okay, well, we need to know what that stuff is. So yeah, there's definitely users where you're going to want to just show the aggregated or refined data. And you can certainly do a lot of that in Incorta, right? In a lot of cases, it's maybe just filtering out nulls or doing some fuzzy logic and creating buckets and things like that. So it's entirely up to you what you expose, how you expose it. If you do logic on it, you can certainly do refining and things like that within Incorta. But there's a lot of cases, if you're doing you get a bill of materials, you're doing an MRP run or something like that, and it's so you've got some anomalies. You want to go look at what fed that algorithm and figure out what was wrong in that assumption, or what went haywire. So there is a need to get down into that transactional level data. So we're not sort of suggesting that you throw out all the raw data to every end user. It's definitely going to depend on that. But when you pull it in, there's operational aspects where you're going to want to really look at all that data. And then in a lot of cases, even if it's for just analytics purposes, you end up having to troubleshoot a lot of that data, making sure, is it refined? Is it clean? Is it accurate? Does it tie out? And then chasing that down through a bunch of ETL is really tough if you can do it at all, right? I did operational reporting, sales ops and marketing ops for about 1.5 years with Senturus at a client, and digging on the way through all the Python code and SSIS code back through Hadoop, back to Salesforce was a nearly impossible task. So again, that lineage is sort of can be sort of a nightmare. And then let's see. So hopefully that answers your question in that.
Hey, Mike, I have a kind of a horizontally related question to that.
Horizontally related? That means related?
Well, it's not exactly tangential.
That sounds orthogonal to me, so but whatever, let's do it.
Orthogonally related.
Sorry for the geometry nerdiness there, folks, but here we go.
So my question, Mike, is in terms of limiting detail access, so I can envision a situation where you might have a set of users who you want to only see aggregate data, right? But then there's some subset of users who you want to be able to drill through to the detail. And how, like in Incorta, would you handle that by doing like separate business views for those types of users, or can you control kind of like drill down permissions within a single business view? Just broadly, how would that be handled?
Yeah, that's a great point. So you could architect it a bunch of different ways, but we do So we have security at every level. You can do role level security in Incorta using, like session variables, i.e. who's logged in right now, and it maps to, say, a security table and determines what they can see or what level of detail they can see, whether they can see the base schemas of that raw data that I showed you, whether they can pull that data in and see that data, whether they have access to the business views or what business views they have access to. So you might have a greater level of summary in some of those. And then column level security. So again, same sort of thing. If they can see personal PII type stuff, HIPAA information, things like that. And we also have, you can use those roles and that security to do obfuscation of data. So if you're showing like social security numbers, maybe you star out the first, the first 5, right, and just show the last 4, things like that. So it's all role-based security. When we integrate again with things like Okta and all that stuff. So, and what's nice again is because of that digital twin, a lot of the security that you might have mapped against that operational system, that transactional system, if you've done that, you can pull that over and leverage it right in Incorta, right, without having to create a new set of structures that map to another data source, because the shape is the same. Does that help?
That does. Thank you. That was awesome. Thanks, Mike. And I don't want to. I've got a couple more questions of my own here, but I can ask you offline because we've got some actual attendee questions for you to cover.
As long as they're horizontal or more vertical. I'm just kidding. Let's see. So another question here is, what types of connections can Power BI use to connect directly to Incorta data? The current setup we're using involves Incorta feeding Synapse, which is then accessed by Power BI. Yeah, so again, and that's an interesting use case because we do, Incorta can be a data hub where we, again, free up the data from maybe Oracle Cloud, which is, makes it really hard to get at the data. You're stuck with Oracle's tools, and maybe you're a Microsoft shop like these folks are. And so you end up using Incorta, but then they're using things like Synapse. So we actually do use our business views and what we call materialized views to shape that data into more of a star schema and push that into Synapse, which is then hit by Power BI. So that's kind of a more Azure stack type of approach. The connections I used are more, it's a Postgres connection. We call it SQLi, and it really just makes Incorta's business views and schemas, again, permission controlled, look like a Postgres database to those tools. And so that's really the type of connection that we support there for that and really any other tool. So it doesn't matter what you're using. And then there's another question here about, do business views work similarly to Cognos framework manager models where joins between query subjects, to use Cognos terminology, query subjects, for those of you who may not be Cognos conversant, are basically queries, right? So usually it's a table, might be a view, a combination of tables, but they call it query subject. So where the joins between those query subjects are implicit and therefore do not need to be known, defined by user while building reports. And the answer is 100%. That's exactly what it's done for. So the joins are handled at the schema level, and the business view allows you to combine information not only and view that in a very friendly way, where the joins are handled back in the schema level, not only within a system but across systems. And that's really the power. And because we have the direct data mapping, we can do those joins, dozens, hundreds of joins across hundreds of thousands of tables across multiple systems with with response time in the seconds, in the low seconds. So Steve, did you have any more questions you wanted to ask? Because that was the end of the question list that I have here. We're right at the top of the hour.
Yeah, so we're at the top of the hour, so I don't want to keep everybody here. I think this is a great stopping point for us, Mike. But thank you, as always, for joining us here, and thanks for all the info.
Happy to join you. Good to be back here. Good to hear your voice.
Incorta, yeah, great to hear your voice out there.
See some familiar names.
For everyone who's attending, thank you for joining us today. You can always reach out to us, of course, on the web, by email, or even by phone if you like talking to people. Also, you may have noticed in the chat window, Scott Felton posted access to his Calendly account. If you'd like to get some time on Scott's calendar to talk more about Incorta, feel free to do that. We're happy to hear from you. And with that, thank you everybody for attending today's webinar. We hope to see you again at a future Senturus webinar. And Mike, thanks again for joining us. Great to have you here.
No problem.
Day, everybody.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks. Have a good day, everybody.